You've been doing everything right for months. You woke up early. You made your budget in Excel. You stopped buying the $5 latte. You canceled Netflix, Spotify, and that gym membership you never used anyway. And when you opened your investment account this month, the number barely moved. Sound familiar? If it does, it's because no one has told you the most uncomfortable truth in personal finance. And I'm going to say it today, even if the latte effect gurus hate it. You cannot budget your way to wealth. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because you're using the wrong tool. You're digging your way to financial freedom with a teaspoon. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to get an excavator. Stay until minute 8 because I'm going to give you a practical exercise called the Skill Audit that you can do today, and it can change the trajectory of the next 5 years of your life. Let's talk about math. Not the boring kind, the kind no one taught you in school. Imagine Peter, the budgeter. Peter earns $50,000 a year. He's extremely disciplined. He saves 20% of his income, which is $10,000 a year. He reads every personal finance book. He knows the 4% rule by heart. Now imagine Richard, the resourceful. Richard also earns $50,000 a year, but instead of optimizing his expenses, he optimizes his income. 1 year later, Richard earns $75,000. Peter saves $10,000 a year. Richard saves $15,000. That's a difference of $9,000 every single year. Over 10 years, invested in the stock market at a 7% return, that difference becomes more than $120,000 in additional wealth. And here's the most devastating part. Peter did everything he was told to do. He followed every rule. He sacrificed every small pleasure. And Richard simply learned something new. Here is the truth nobody wants to admit. There is a floor to how much you can spend. You need to eat. You need housing, you need to live, but there is no ceiling on how much you can earn. A budget pushes you toward the floor. Skills push you away from the ceiling. That's what the latte effect books never tell you, because it's easier to sell the idea that your Starbucks habit is the problem than to admit the real issue is structural. The solution is not in your coffee cup, it's in your shovel. So if income is the shovel that gets you to financial freedom, let's talk about the type of shovel, because not all income sources are equal. There are 2 types of extra income people usually consider. The first is low-friction linear income. This is driving Uber at midnight, delivering food on weekends, selling random items online. Is it bad? No. It's simply a slightly bigger spoon. It gives you money today, but it trades time for money directly. The moment you stop working, the money stops. The second type is high-leverage skills. This is different. A high-leverage skill is one where the market pays you for the value you create, not the hours you work. For example, copywriting. The ability to write words that sell. A strong copywriter can charge $5,000 for a sales email that generates $500,000 in revenue for a client. Specialized sales. Not selling door-to-door vacuums. Enterprise software sales, high-ticket consulting services. These professionals often earn between $80,000 and $120,000 a year plus commission. Data analysis. Right now, the world is drowning in data, but there aren't enough people who know how to interpret it. With 6 months of learning Python and SQL, you can qualify for jobs paying $70,000 to start. Digital marketing, specifically performance marketing. Google Ads, Meta Ads, search engine optimization. Companies pay enormous amounts to people who can generate customers predictably. Now let's talk about a number nobody mentions when comparing skills to investing. Historically, the stock market returns around 7 to 10% per year. That's fantastic. But listen to this. If you invest $10,000 in the market and earn 8%, you make $800 in a year. But if you invest $2,000 in learning a skill that increases your salary by $20,000, that's a 1,000% return in 12 months. No stock, no ETF, no investment fund will give you a 1,000% return in 12 months under normal conditions, but the right skill might. And here's the crucial point. You're not buying a course. You're buying an asset that produces cash flow for life. When you learn to sell, you can sell forever. When you learn to program, that knowledge doesn't expire. When you learn to write persuasive copy, you remain valuable as long as human psychology exists. These skills belong to you. No one can take them away. They don't drop 40% in a market crash. They don't lose value due to inflation. They are intangible assets on your personal balance sheet. At this point, you probably have two reactions. The first one is, wow, I should learn a high-income skill. The second reaction is, yeah, sure, but I'm too old for that. If that was your reaction, congratulations. You've just met the real villain of your financial story. It's not the market, it's not the economy, it's not your boss. It's the voice in your head that associates learning something new with feeling stupid. Let's talk about Richard and Peter again. At 32, Richard decided to learn copywriting. He had no experience. His first projects were terrible. His first client paid him $50 for a job that took 20 hours. Do you know what Peter said at that same age? That's not for us. We are accountants. It's too late to change. 5 years later, Richard owns a copywriting agency generating $400,000 a year. Peter is still optimizing his coffee budget. What was the real difference? Richard was willing to look stupid for 6 months. That's it. There's fascinating research about adult learning. The biggest obstacle is not the difficulty of the material, it's the fear of embarrassment. Children learn faster than adults not because they're smarter, but because they don't care about falling, failing, or looking foolish. Adults have traded that freedom for the comfort of appearing competent, and that trade is costing us fortunes. Imagine yourself 5 years from now looking back at today, and the only question you ask yourself is, why didn't I start? What will your answer be? Because you were afraid to look like a beginner? The comfort zone is the most expensive place you can live. Its rent is paid in unrealized dreams and missed opportunities. Let's get practical. This is called the Skill Audit. 4 questions. You can answer them with a pen and paper right now. Question 1. What does the highest paid person in my field do that I don't do yet? Question 2. What skill, if I mastered it within the next 12 months, would make me impossible to ignore? Question 3. Is demand for this skill increasing or decreasing? Question 4. Can I monetize this skill in multiple ways? Once you answer these 4 questions, you have your target. You have the name of your excavator. Now comes execution. The 1-hour rule. I'm not asking you to quit your job. I'm not asking for heroic sacrifices. Just 1 hour a day. 1 hour that you're probably spending right now on TikTok, Instagram, or watching what strangers are doing online. 1 hour of deliberate learning every single day. What happens with 1 hour a day for a year? 1 hour times 365 days. 365 hours. With that time, you could complete a data analytics certificate, build a copywriting portfolio, learn the foundations of programming, or master the basics of digital marketing and get your first clients. The first year doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough for someone to pay you more than they pay you today. That's the goal. Look, I understand the frustration. The message of save more and spend less has been the gospel of personal finance for decades, and it matters. Budgeting matters. Saving matters. But if your income is $35,000, $45,000, or $50,000, you haven't been told the whole truth. There are 2 levers. Lever 1, how much you keep. Lever 2, how much you earn. And the second lever is far more powerful during the early years of building wealth. The stock market builds your wealth in the long term, but your skills build the income that feeds that market. Without income to invest, the best portfolio in the world is just theory. So yes, invest, budget, maximize your savings rate. But first, get yourself a better shovel.
If this video opened your eyes, leave a like. And in the comments, tell me, what skill did you identify in your skill audit? Let me know in the comments. And in the next video, we'll talk about how to charge what you're actually worth once you have the skill. Because many people have $200,000 skills, but charge like they're worth $60,000. And that's another financial crime nobody talks about. See you in the next video.